empezar de una vez, voy a presentarles brevemente a nuestros invitados del día. Super Testnet, he's an independent software developer focused on Bitcoin. Is the guy in the middle. We have Sergi Delgado right here. He is from Chaincon Labs, and he's the creator of the Eye of Satoshi, that is a watchtower project for Lightning Network. And we have right there in the corner Benjamin Dean, that is the director of product strategy at Wisdom Tree. So we are going to talk about Taproot. That is, I think, one of the biggest improvement that we had in the last years for Bitcoin. But I think that it is not that much known, and I don't know why. But I want to start like asking you, Sergi, for example, what is Taproot?
I mean, to me, Taproot is a improvement in terms of mostly privacy and reduction on size when you want to do complicated things in Bitcoin main chain. I mean, you can use it also for Lightning and stuff like that, and we can talk about that later. But I think the whole selling point for Taproot was being able to create complex scripts using Bitcoin without having to reveal all the parts of that script, right? Imagine that you want to create a complex multisig and you don't want to provide or tell the world what all the conditions to that complex multisig is, or you want to have like multiple spend paths, but without having to tell the world or reveal the world what those are until you need to do so, right? When you need to like spend for one of the tap trees, you need to like provide all the proof and like all the information about it. But if you never end up doing so, then you can just like use whatever path you're trying to do. And also it makes things look kind of like all the same. One of the main selling points of Taproot was that if we are all using Taproot and we always use kind of like the happy path for Taproot, then all the stuff on chain will look slightly similar, making it more complicated for companies who do chain analysis stuff to figure out what things were going on.
Okay, thank you, Sergi. And Testnet, if you can tell us a little what changed between the programmability possibilities that Taproot enabled against what we had before?
Sure, yeah. Taproot did a couple of things for Bitcoin. One of them was that it increased the size and complexity of the scripts that you're able to create on Bitcoin. Another thing was that it moved us to Schnorr signatures. This is a new type of signature scheme that is more efficient. It saves about 8 bytes in every transaction when you're using it, as opposed to the old style of scripting that we used to use. And it also made it so you can have more private multi-signature. So multi-signature is a transaction type in Bitcoin that allows multiple people to control a coin or control a Bitcoin address and decide how to spend the money inside. And due to the Taproot upgrade, we have more private versions of that, where it looks just like a normal address and you can't really tell that there's multiple people in control of it. So that paves the way for better privacy on the Lightning Network, which uses multi-sig, as well as in vaults, where people tend to use multi-sig as well for long-term storage. We could make those look like normal Bitcoin addresses now, where you can't really tell that there's anything funky going on. So those are some of the things Taproot made possible.
Okay, thank you. And Benjamin, if you can tell us a little about what use case that enables this change, because we used to think that Bitcoin is mainly for transactions, for financial transactions, and that's it. But if you can tell us a little what other things now we can do with Taproot?
Yeah, one of the first, oh, sorry, him.
Yes.
No, you can go ahead if you want.
Sorry, no, you're first.
Yeah, that's cool. Look, so I'm from Wisdom Tree, a traditional financial services company. It's about $100 billion in assets. Look, we have lots of assets. We have commodities, currencies, fixed income, equities. It keeps going on and on and on. We also have Bitcoin. And one of the things I'm trying to get across the people back at the mothership is, well, if Taproot Assets turns up and we can use the Bitcoin base layer and the Lightning Network to transfer other assets, that potentially opens up a very interesting source of distribution. Remember that we care about speed, cost, and security. We know with Lightning it's fast, we know it's cheap, and we know with the base Bitcoin layer it's secure. That's actually a relatively compelling proposition for people who like to try and go build their own blockchains or who scurry off to find the nearest Solana competitor. For us, it's really just about getting people, things, different assets over the Bitcoin network, fast, cheap, and secure. And it could be whatever asset people want. If they need to send data from place to place and store it somewhere securely for all time, then this checks the boxes.
Okay, Testnet, I saw that you wanted to answer the previous question, if you can add anything.
No, I just thought you pointed to me.
No, but did you want to add something because maybe you know other use cases or something?
One of the unfortunate things it's been used for is inscriptions. So because it increased the size of scripts that you're allowed to put on the blockchain, one of the things you can put on the blockchain is images. And people are like, now we can put really big images on there. So that's one thing that people are using it for. Yeah, I see you. I know you're using it for inscriptions. You don't need to. You can go use something else, like Taproot assets. Great, much better fit for that.
But that's a really good point and one that I kind of balance. If I'm going to go and tell these people, like, yeah, you should be using this technology, and they go and bloat it with a whole lot of rubbish data that's not really very useful and impedes Bitcoin users from sending transactions conveniently and cheaply, then that's a problem and a drawback. So in my mind, it really is that kind of thing. Where are the cons here? Because it's all very nice for us to go and bloat the block space with data, but it's maybe not necessary. It's just, it will depend on the implementation that ends up coming out at the end.
Okay.
Plain time.
Before the panel, I talked a little with the Luxor guys. Luxor is a pool, so I asked them how many transactions that are with the P2TR format that are the Taproot transactions they are having, and it's really interesting because, for example, last month, in the last week, it is more than 70% because they are mainly related to inscription, to ordinal BRC and all this stuff. So I want like your input, your thoughts on this. Like, do you think that it's a good use or is whatever it is, Sergi?
It's interesting because before ordinals became a thing, pay-to-Taproot outputs were not being used that much, were not being used at all, mostly. And one of the interesting things about using that kind of output, as I was trying to point out before, is kind of like hiding amongst the crowd, being able to like do things without others knowing exactly what you're doing. But we now know that most of that is because of ordinals, because like that's what like people are doing these days. Do I think that's good for the network? I don't think so, but I mean, it is a free market in that sense, and as we've seen also from people who have tried to prevent ordinals from happening, the network and the mempool is completely pure, PvP in that sense. So if no one else is using it, if you have like a use case for it and you're paying for the fees, and we are not doing anything to prevent it, or we are not using the space for anything better, I mean, there's nothing we can do from my point of view. Either we make a change to make it not a thing, or we kind of like accept that it's going to be like that until there's other transactions using that block space that are willing to pay for the fees that those transactions are paying, and that's what we do.
Testnet, what are your thoughts on this?
Sounds good. Another thing that's increased usage of it is the LND. LND recently added support for Taproot channels, and so that's increased usage because LND is a very popular tool for managing UTXOs. Another one is Moon Wallet. So like a year ago, Moon Wallet added support for Taproot in their wallet, and so that they were quite popular Bitcoin wallet. So that's another reason why usage started to increase.
Okay.
More people adding support for it.
Okay, Benjamin, and like we have this idea of Taproot being already here, like it is already activated, but besides the inscriptions and all these things, these transactions, there is not that popular in things like multisig or other interesting things that it enables. Why do you think that it is not the case? Why are we not seeing many more Taproot multisigs or stuff like that?
It's just a question of the process by which the technology is understood and adopted, and then what it's used for. I mean, it's nice to hear that the transactions are going up on the networks. It's nice to hear that people are trying this stuff out. Ultimately, though, if it ends up being a zero-sum game where people are trading coins against each other, it's not terribly productive economic activity. If instead you could take an economic system that's meant to fuel productive investment, but you can do it in a better way. The current system is very slow, expensive, not very transparent. What we have here is technology. And why is it that way? It's because there's lots of intermediaries who take cuts along the way, and you don't know who they are at the end. So if we've got technology here that allows you to cut out intermediaries, speed it up, and drop the costs down to what the actual end users are meant to be paying, and they channel that into productive economic activity, then that looks like a much better picture than we're in right now. That is what's very interesting. That is going to take time, because you've got to get a whole lot of people who are very interested in taking their cut along the way, convinced that they're going to go extinct if they don't get on board. That's what we're up to. And when I start seeing that economic activity occurring on-chain with this technology, then that will be a use case that eclipses all of the NFTs that you could possibly mint in your entire lifetime. And that's a fact.
Okay, and I want to continue with you, Benja.
I want to add, if you don't mind. I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen like that much alternative usage, first is because Taproot channels are a thing. Like they're starting to be. I think there's going to be a shift from like the old format of Lightning channels to Taproot channels in the near future. But for things that really don't need that kind of change, like we know that multisig will be better. We know that we can use these for like bolts and stuff like that, but need other type of changes. And for things that already work, the amount of work that you have to put in order to switch from your SegWit-based design to the Taproot-based design is completely non-negligible. So you have to like put dev hours to do so. You have to like design it properly, and maybe you end up with something that works the exact same way, but you're saving some space or you're gaining some privacy. But you may not be that incentivized to do so. Like we've seen how the adoption of SegWit back in the day was lagging for some big actors in the network because they were already like using it in any other way, and they didn't mind having to pay additional fees in order to like use pay-to-script hash or whatever they were using, right? So it seems that, or at least it seems to me, that until you don't really open a new use case that it may provide you more revenue down the line, you may not be incentivized to say, oh, I'm going to update because you know it's going to be slightly better than what we have.
Okay, and Benja, now I want to ask you, because before we were talking a little, and what kind of institutions or new actors do you see that could take advantage of what Taproot enables? Like we can now have tokens, we now can have shares and different stuff. So what kind of new actors this new use case attracts?
Look, most people have seen this technology as one of two things in kind of the traditional finance space. It's either a payments mechanism or it's an investment, like gold. And I mean, the reality is that it's those two things, but it can be used in lots of different other ways, which is what we're talking about here today. Now, who could it potentially bring in the future? Now, I have the feeling that large asset managers and banks are going to be the last ones to adopt this stuff, and that's a good thing. What it does do, though, is create opportunities for those who wish to create companies built on this technology that do things above board, that allow them to transmit assets in a speedy, cheap, transparent manner. There's a massive opportunity there because you can move so much faster than any of the incumbents, carve out market share, and build yourselves a moat. It's an absolutely amazing opportunity to create what looks like the traditional finance people of today, but in a much smaller and nimbler form, leveraging the capabilities this technology gives. You have to do it above board, though. You can't go and rush and build it overnight, then crash it like FTX. You have to actually do things by the book somewhat. I know it's a bit slower, but hey, that's how you build a sustainable business here, and those folks have that opportunity now, which they didn't have 5 years ago, and especially 10 years ago.
Okay, Testnet, and I want to ask you, like, now we have this new way to create different things on top of Bitcoin, but we've seen in the crypto industry that there are a lot of smart contract platforms, smart contract chains, and they've been doing this tokenization and all the stuff. But do you think that that Bitcoin is ready to compete in that use case, and how, if yes?
No, I don't think Bitcoin's got anything near the ease with which you can start developing an Ethereum application by going to like ethereum.org and you just click the developers tab. They've got everything you need. We don't have anything like that in Bitcoin. At least in my experience, when you want to start writing Bitcoin smart contracts, there's a whole lot to learn. There's not a lot of material. You don't know where to go. You don't know who to ask. There's very few communities of people who are doing it that you can go ask for help from. So yeah, I don't see any of that on the horizon, and so I still think for the foreseeable future, it'll continue to be really difficult to make that type of stuff on Bitcoin.
So do you think that we are not going to take the value that is in other chains to Bitcoin, so Taproot really doesn't enable like these kind of capabilities?
Well, it enables it. Like we can do all that stuff on Bitcoin, but just because you can do it doesn't make it easy. And in order to, it's like developer tools and developer platforms, developer communities don't just come from a software upgrade. You know, they come from really hard work of making this stuff happen. And that's the part where I don't currently see anyone doing that.
Can I ask a question? Go off script a little bit because it's fun. Like, so just thinking then through with Taproot and the way that ordinals have come and essentially denial of service the network. Is this kind of like, do you have to get back to, well, what is the Bitcoin network there for? And, you know, does it need to be something different than what it is? Does it need to have NFTs on it? Should it have it? I'm just interested to hear what you think as somebody who sits there, both of you actually, and have watched this whole process play out, because I have trouble myself trying to reconcile the capabilities it creates and then how they can be misused.
I think it heavily depends on who you ask it to. Myself, I don't think so. Like, I don't think we should try to like compete with all those platforms in terms of like NFTs or things like. I'm personally not interested in those. So like, what can I say? But there's people who definitely see value in that, and that's like the main reason why we can see like ordinals and inscriptions being a thing in Bitcoin. Every single time we add some functionality to the main chain or the main protocol, people find like ways to like circumvent or like use, you know, like that edge case to like take advantage of something that previously was not easy or was not as cheap, right? But again, I think we should. Well, I don't want to like tell people what they should do or they shouldn't do. But from my point of view, we should accept what like baggage we introduce to the chain with the new changes. And if we introduce something that we are not comfortable with, then we change it. And if that's not the case, and whatever we have enabled pays for like the additional baggage that we've brought, then just let it be. That's kind of like my point.
Me, they were like unhappy with some arguments I made. Oh, does?
What? I don't know.
Who said that?
Go yourself.
We're about to close because we are running out of time. So I want you three guys like tell me how do you envision the future of Bitcoin? Let's say in 10 years we have. Are we having more Taproot usage? Are we having different things on Taproot? Are we finally seeing the stable coins on Taproot? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, yeah. No, what was
Yeah, look, it's going to look totally different. I mean, most of us should have remembered 10 years ago, and compare it to now, it's totally different. You know, I'm a wisdom tree, and there are spot Bitcoin ETFs now in the process of approval on Wall Street. Like, that's where we are in the adoption curve. Might not like it. That's reality. That's what happens when technology kind of progresses along and it becomes something that's indistinguishable. It's like social media. No one complains about it anymore. They just use it. Even your grandma does. So that, like, in 10 years, it's just going to look different if that's because a whole lot of other assets have been brought on chain or because people are printing ordinals and NFTs. We'll see. I just hope that, like, folks keep their heads screwed on because just because you can do something doesn't make it a good idea. And, you know, we built something pretty impressive here. It would be a shame to go and squander it. with like not having the foresight to think ahead.
I decline to try to predict what the world will look like in 10 years. I can't predict what it'll look like in one. But I will say what I hope Bitcoin is used for in 10 years, and I hope it's used as a better money. There are people today who try to use Bitcoin for speculation. I think that's the primary thing people do with it, is they buy it in the hopes that they can time the market and sell it for more than they bought it for. And there's a sizable portion of people who use it because it's a better money than what they currently have. I hope to see more of that second thing in the future.
I'm going to side Super Testnet in that sense. I think this is a tricky question. It's kind of like going back to back in time and like asking Alan Turing what he thinks the world is going to look like, because like the first computer has been born, and expecting him to like quote Bitcoin or something like that. I do hope that we can see like more multi-sig adoption, like the cool stuff that like Taproot was supposed to enable. Like I'm excited for Frost. I'm excited for like proper use of multi-sig in terms of like inheritance. If we end up like seeing bulks of stuff like that, which I'm not like pitching for, I'm just like saying it's something that is being discussed. But yeah, like I don't try to predict the future, to be honest.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, the audience, and well, that's it. Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Big round of applause for our panelists.